Hello everyone, it's Dr. A, History Surfer. If you've never been to the channel before, welcome. If this is your returning trip, welcome back. As you can see here, today is our lecture for Art in the Stone Age. This is for my art history class, ARH 2050, and it is the first real lecture in the semester, if you will. So if you're watching this, it means you're missing the first class. We're going back now to the prehistoric period, and you always have to realize when you are studying this period, a lot of this is speculation because, as I said, it's prehistoric. Prehistoric means it's before writing. It's traditionally divided into three periods: Paleolithic or Old Stone Age, Mesolithic or Middle Stone Age, and Neolithic or New Stone Age. This era is marked by the use of tools by our early human ancestors. And this period also, you have to realize, was a time when early humans shared the planet with a number of now extinct hominin relatives, including Neanderthal and Denisovans. And I always struggle to say that correctly, so please bear with me. What you have to realize as we get into the Paleolithic period is there's two types of art in the Stone Age. There are two main forms: small sculptures and large paintings and engravings. And so those we just simply use the terms portable and permanent. There's a various amount of art from this period, and most of the small sculptures are made of clay, bone, ivory, or stone. And for the most part, the Venus figurines are the most indicative of this era, the ones we look at the most. So let's begin by talking about some of the earliest evidence of humans and their desire to create works of art. As you can see here on this map, we are looking at about 2000 BCE, and the green areas, so all of this green is where we start to see this development of, for lack of a better term, culture. So we have the expressions of art and also gatherings of humans. There's a lot of movement in this period. In fact, this period is also termed as the hunter-gatherer period. And so these portable and permanent pieces of art really are, portable makes sense, they're moving around. Permanent makes sense too, because they're coming, we think, back to certain areas as they move around in patterns that are established for them for hunting. So it would be a seasonal movement, and you would come back to a cave that you had done a painting in or carving in, perhaps for some ceremonial purpose. This is conjecture. As I said from the beginning, a lot of this stuff is conjecture. We have a lot of, we don't know. I'm a historian. If you guys don't know me, I am a historian, and historians, our bread and butter are definitely documents. So traveling forward, the prehistoric period, we're going to focus in one area. Well, we're going to start in Africa, actually. But most of the real cache, for lack of a better word, of items for at least the study from our perspective is going to be found here in this area, with some things up in here. We're also going to look in here. But when we move down to Africa, we're moving way down to the south, and there we're going to find a painting that is really one of probably earliest things we've ever found. These were discoveries because of the fact that the artworks were exposed on rock walls, and so they're vulnerable to weather and harsh climates, and they're hard to date. So in the Apollo 11 cave in the Huns Mountains of southwestern Namibia, they have dated these unusual images because they're also, besides being very old, and they may date back, they think, until recently, these were the oldest known artwork of any kind from the African continent. And more recent discoveries have even gone back, we believe, as far as 100,000 BCE, making Africa home to the oldest images in the world. We have the image here of a half feline and half human, and you can see here it's ochre, and so it is put on this slab of rock. Again, very difficult to date because of its exposure to exterior elements. The animal combined with the human form becomes something that is a quite common motif. And in fact, we have these therianthropic figures emerging from that very early time. Another image that was found is the Lion Man. Now he is in the Hohensteinstadel area, and that's Germany. He was found, it's in southwestern Germany, in a cave by the archaeologist Otto Walsing, and he is called the Lion Man in English. It's about 40,000 years ago that we see him being done, and we know that there were small groups moving through the valleys here. Let me show you the top of his head. Sorry about that. Sometimes things get cut off. And they were hunting mammoth, reindeer, bison, wild horses, other things. We know that because we have found evidence of human occupation in caves. And we find traces of campfires and tools. He's carved in this period, we see him, this therianthropic being. He was combining the form of an animal with a man. Again, we've seen that before. And he is a really spectacular find because this discovery in 1939, if you know anything about history, was interrupted by World War II. And then finally, 30 years later, it was finally recognized that the ivory pieces that were found, because it was found in pieces, were part of a figurine. And another 2 decades would pass before experts restored the statue. And by 2009, the 300 fragments were reconstructed. And by 2012, 2013, we see this whole thing completed, restored. And this has provided archaeologists in some real important information as far as techniques. We do, though, know that the idea of an artist working on the Lion Man is that we have a clear attribution here of a human being who was set free by his community only to do this piece of artwork. When you're doing art, you can't hunt, you can't go fishing, you can't work, you work on this. When, again, we talk, though, of this period, mostly we concentrate on the Venus figurines. The Venus figurines is a perfect example of, definitely, we are naming things from our own perspective. And a lot of people think these are called that because of the androcentric nature of the archaeologists of the age when they discovered most of these. We have clearly a Paleolithic figure who perhaps was some type of fertility goddess or representation of other things. There's a bunch of theories. We don't know what their main purpose was. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. There's a lot more to be said about this. So in class, I would show this film, and I have it on the playlist for ARH 2050, and the name of the film is The Venus Figurines. What do they represent? I put the link here. You won't be able to catch it from this video, but I just wanted to give credit to where it is. It's hard to really date stuff in this period, so a lot of times I'm going to show you kind of about dates, but we do know that this is the oldest of the Venus figurines, and she is the Venus of Holy Fells. Let me just tilt the camera a little bit. The Venus of Holy Fells, called that because that's where she was found. It's a cave in Germany, and it is a very small piece because you can see here, she is, let me see if I put a image with, no, but she is small enough that you could put her on, this was actually carved, and you could put her on some type of string and wear her around her neck. The dating of these things is relative, and I always say that. We know that the Venus of Holy Fells is so much older just because of the mammoth ivory, what she's made of. So she was carried with the person who either carved her or received her as a gift, and she was worn around your neck, perhaps as a talisman, perhaps as something to, you know, remind yourself of your goals. We don't know. But what we do know is they're all typically kind of the same. We have the big, large breasts, we have the big belly, and no feet. So these are not meant to be stood up. They're not a little, you know, thing to worship. They're meant to be carried in your hand as you travel. This Venus of Willendorf is perhaps the most famous of all of the Venus figurines. She's looks very big compared to some of them, but she's only 4 3/8 inches. Notice she has no face. This is the archaeologist who found her. Sorry, I didn't mention that. But she is anonymous. I'm going to show you an up close of her. Here we have the big breasts, the big belly, the exaggerated genitalia. As you can see, she has no face. She has no personality. So is she a real person? We don't think these are anything to do with a type of portrait. That's not. We infer perhaps she is an idea. Perhaps she has a function related to fertility. We do know that the people who made her were people who cared about making beautiful things. And we think that it shows that the Paleolithic people had an awareness of the importance of women. She definitely typifies this archetype, if you will. We also have lots of things spun off from her. I was a student sent this to me. I have a shirt. So she's really famous, and she's the one most people talk about. There are some that don't follow that portable rule, like the Venus of La Salle. She's a limestone bas-relief nude figure. She's in southwestern France. So when I say bas-relief, that means a low-relief image. This figure holds a bison horn. Right there, you can see it. Or cornucopia, possibly. And it has 13 notches on it. According to some researchers, this may symbolize the number of moons or the number of menstrual cycles in one year. She's also got some traces of color. So we see this reddish color made from red ochre. She's located not far from Lascaux, one of the most famous cave systems from this period. It's not portable, so it's therefore classified as a permanently fixed image. She clearly has her hand, oops, let me go back, on her abdomen. And so again, maybe she's linked to fertility. The Venus of Lascaux then is different than these other Venus images. And I skipped one thing here because I want you to see how many of these there are. I'm probably going to show this map again. I'm pretty sure I put 2 of these in here. But just so you know, they're all over. We find them all over. Is there an intersection? I wouldn't doubt that. These people are nomadic. And the Black Venus of Dolní Věstonice, she's found in the Czech Republic, is considered the first ceramic piece of art. So she's actually a fired piece of art. And you can see how tiny she is. A lot of theories about these Venus figurines, people. The Black Venus from Dolní Věstonice is probably the first kiln-fired piece. Again, it's, always a lot of conjecture here. So now, let's talk about cave systems. When we talk about the Venus figurines, we have lots and lots and lots of theories. Same thing when we talk about the cave systems of the age. And we're going to start talking about that in the context of painting. When we talk about painting, we're really talking about cave art. I think that you have to really accept that it's going to be important for location for painting, because painting is more fragile than a hard surface that you can carry around. But when we look at painting, we have to really be aware of they're probably ceremonial. I think that archaeologists and anthropologists agree, but again, we don't know. We believe that the Cave of Altamira and the cave art of northern Spain represent a peak in Paleolithic cave art that have developed across Europe from the Urals to the Iberian Peninsula. And perhaps these pieces of art, in fact, when we see Chauvet, are representative of the earliest pieces of art done. Cave art at the Cave of Altamira was discovered in 1879 by Marcelino Sanz de Santuala, and his daughter Maria was with him, and they saw the beautiful images that were revealed that Marcelino amateur archaeologist discovered and visited the cave beginning in 1875. He took his findings to a universal exhibition in Paris, and he was laughed at. The study of prehistory as a science was in its infancy, and many of the ideas that the scientists of the age had, they didn't believe that these were done by early prehistoric people. There were heated debates. They were considered to be modern forgeries. And Marcelino was publicly humiliated. It wasn't until 1902 when the finding of several other prehistoric paintings really confirmed that these were real images from the prehistoric period, and forgery was, unlikely. Unfortunately, the vindication came too late because he had died 14 years earlier. The Cave of Altamira was the first place in the world where the existence of rock art from the Upper Paleolithic age was identified. You have to remember that. It had 25 large polychrome bison. Let's look at that. So these bison are what we would call an aurochs. It's an early discovery, and this is really important, so don't forget this particular cave. Aurochs were the beasts that eventually would lead to the modern cow, but you can see how large they were. Huge. And so perhaps by painting them, the artist is, trying to understand them. They're really interesting because not only are there a lot of them, but also, let's go back to the original one. Look at how the artist uses the texture of the rock to create form. So while these aren't perfectly realistic, they're certainly not highly abstracted. In the Upper Paleolithic period, then, we have a lot of this old art, and this new level and perfecting this skill is really going to keep becoming more and more and more evident as we get more and more into the discovery of more caves. At Peshmeral, more than 70 animal pictures were discovered, but most famous here are the spotted horses. It's a unique composition, an exceptionally well-preserved masterpiece dating back 29,000 years. And in total, almost 800 representations have been discovered in the cave. These were discovered in 1922 by the children from a nearby village. And these were discovered and then immediately studied. The cave has been open to the public since 1926, and it is owned by the village near there. The Peshmeral Prehistory Center is clearly a place to go. I do love these because I love the handprints of the artists as they left us this sign for us to think about them. The painting is done by forming a cone with your hand. You chew charcoal and you blow the charcoal onto the surface. Lascaux was arguably the most famous of the and by the way, Peshmeral is the earliest cave open to the public. Sorry about that. I don't mean that to show up. That'll fade. Sorry about that. But it is not, Peshmeral is the earliest cave open to the public, but it's nowhere near as famous as Lascaux. Lascaux was discovered in September in 1940, and it was given monumental protection in December of that year, and then it was open to people. Estimated to be about 20,000 years old, the paintings consist primarily of large animals once native to the region. It's in France, and it's a complex cave with several areas, and it is priceless. But recently in Paris, there was a meeting about Lascaux, and it was there that these paintings realized were really, really in danger. There's 2,000 figures, which are animals, humans, and abstract signs. You can see here a human in this particular one. Of the animals, equines predominate, and we also have pictures of cattle, bison, felines, a bird, bison, humans, and some of these are just huge, like 17 feet long is probably the longest one. It is an extremely amazing, representation for the period. But unfortunately, Lascaux, after it was open to the public, began to experience some really terrible results of humans and the way that they interact with it and the way they breathe, essentially. Lascaux is definitely opened in 1948, and the fungus that began to cover the walls really by 2000 was just something they couldn't even clean. So it is closed, and they had air conditioned it, but it has not done well. The situation became so grave that in 2006, black mold appeared. They closed the cave, and a single person has only been allowed to go in and out of it once a month to check on the progress. But you can see here the beautiful, depictions of the aurochs and the various animals. It's a very, very complex and rich vision that we hope we don't lose. Cave is destroyed, and really by people touching it, and like I said, their breath. The fungus cannot be removed. In 2010, one of the people who toured it for the last time calls it the funeral service for Lascaux. Perhaps even more important is a later discovery, 1994, Chauvet. It's more than 2 times the age of most caves. A weekend caver discovered it, and radiocarbon dating determined the works date back 36,000 years, more than double the age of any comparable cave art yet uncovered. This is really revising the beginning of art, and Homo sapiens at that point really were sharing this space with Neanderthals as well. Neanderthals, people have had a lot of, theories about them, and one of them is that they were actually also doing art. Not these type of drawings that we're seeing here of the horses and everything, but these were also more rudimentary, but still, I've read some interesting things that they believe Neanderthal actually contributed to Homo sapiens' ability to speak, because we did interact with them. And those of you who are watching who have ancestors from Western Europe, you probably will test for some Neanderthal if you do a DNA test. I know that my father did, and he had Neanderthal. He's from Western Europe. The Neanderthals were dominant in this region. But back to the art, as you can see here, it's definitely an expression of some pretty complex figures. Again, it's naturalistic. And one of my favorites from Chauvet is definitely the rhino. Are there rhinos in this region? That's the question for me, always has been. But at this point, we definitely know that these people are doing these things. Well, not definitely, but we're pretty sure these are ritualistic communion with the spirits. And I think it's just so interesting that so many different things appear in these caves. All right, that's the end for the Paleolithic period. The intellectual advances found in the Paleolithic period would be expanded upon once we get into the Neolithic period.